And welcome to all of you out there in Zoom. This is Steve Batley, who's our landscape architect and permaculture expert, and who has designed this and many other gardens around Sydney, right?
Yes.
Yeah, very exciting to keep discovering more of them. And my name's Julian Lee, and I'm the sustainability educator here at Randwick Council. We're in a different section of the permaculture garden today. We're in the sort of barbecue area slash veggie growing area, which is where we'll probably spend a lot of this course. So this is number 2 of 10. So if you're new today, make sure you sign up for the other ones too, because it is a continuous series and we'll be developing on the knowledge from before. We're on Gadigal and Bidjigal land here. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also acknowledge any Indigenous people that might be in the audience. Today's all about zone and sector analysis. Yes?
According to our run sheet.
According to our run sheet. Yeah. So today's going to be a fun day. I'll hand you over to Steve.
Yeah, so we'll mix it up a little bit. So last week, what did we do last week? Permaculture. What about it? If you could Zoomers were here last week, feel free to shout out. If not, feel free to shout out anyway. But last week, so we...
Yeah, and I can see that there are some people here in Zoom that were here last week, so no hiding behind the Zoom screen.
Yeah. So we did, we did a bit of a background what permaculture is. And we did one other thing. We started the design process. Remember?
Site analysis, where we looked at the sun and the wind and the sort of relationship.
Yeah. So site analysis. So going outside and feeling what was going on, looking for warm, sunny areas, shady areas, and starting to read the landscape and do some analysing of the site. So we're going to do a little bit more of that today and build on that site analysis process and do a thing called a sector analysis. So we'll be actually doing it on a thing called a mud map. Which is just a really rough sketch of your space. And then we'll be overlaying a thing called a sector analysis. And then we'll briefly touch about another idea in permaculture, which is called zone planning. So that's a way of kind of arranging landscape in zones. So we'll briefly touch on that, but I wanted to get into a little bit of hands-on stuff. So we're going to move seed planting from a few weeks down the track to today. So we're going to show you how to make your own seed raising mix and how to plant a seed. And the guys who are here, we're going to actually do some planting of seeds and maybe at home if you wanted to do this as well over the weekend or something. And then over the course of the next 9 weeks, we'll get to watch our little seeds grow and then plant them out in the garden. So that's something we'll do today as well. So we'll start. I realized last week, you guys on Zoom, we didn't actually show you the garden that we'll be working in. So we'll go for a quick walk. We'll show you a couple of different things. And then we'll come back and we'll look at a thing called a sector analysis. So a little bit like we did last week with our observation. So as we go, we'll do some observing and interacting, which is one of our permaculture principles. Actually, while I'm walking, we'll cover the zone idea, the idea of zoning. So, last week we talked about permaculture having a whole set of principles that you can call on to make decisions when you're designing your ecosystem. Permaculture also has some tools, and one of them is a thing called zone planning, and it relates to the principle of design from patterns to details. So the way you can think about laying out your landscape on a broader scale is this thing called zone planning, and it's a pattern that you can overlay onto the landscape. And it starts with zone 0, which is, does anyone know what zone 0 might be? Where you live. So and specifically your house, so the building that you're in. So it could be your kitchen and your dining and the places that you live in. And then the zones go out from that in relative to how often you might visit them or how much energy it takes to visit them, or I like to think of it as how often. So outside of zone 0 is, funnily enough, is zone 1.
So in zone 1, you might locate all those things that you would visit pretty much every day or a couple of times a day. What sort of things might you put in zone 1, do you think? Yeah, herbs. We're kind of standing in a zone 1 right now. So veggies, those things that you'd be visiting to pick regularly or water or tend or look after. You could put your chickens in a zone 1 because you visit them every day. What else? Maybe your worm farm. Yep, worm farm, definitely. Compost. So that's they'd be in your zone 1. And it can be, you know, sometimes it's drawn as kind of concentric circles going out from zone 0, but it's not necessarily the case. It's just that distance and the time it takes. Outside that zone, you move into zone 2, which is things that you might visit once a week or once every few days or less often. So maybe things like you might have your bananas down in zone 2, or your food forest, which is kind of through that doorway, or yeah, some of your fruit trees. So things that you are going to visit, but not as often. Maybe zone 2. Zone 3 in permaculture is generally not an urban kind of thing. It's more of a broad scale agriculture. So you might have your sheep or your cattle or your broad scale crops out in zone 3. Zone 4 is like a managed forest, I guess. So it's like wilderness, but it's a wilderness that you're looking after and managing and harvesting from. And zone 5 is wilderness that we kind of just, you know, it's there for the sake of itself rather than anything that humans get anything from. So probably won't have zone 5 on your balcony. It's a small space, so we'll be focusing mostly on the zone 1 stuff. So the intensive, highly productive kind of things that you'd have in a zone 1. So that's that. So this is our zone 1, and you'll see it's well, what will you see? See, there's a fair bit going on in terms of plant growth. We've got these raised beds that can demonstrate different types of raised beds that you could have. We've got our vertical gardens. We've got there's a fair bit going on in here. We've got our fence that we can grow things on. But you'll get to know this space more and more over the coming weeks, and why you might notice there's a certain way of planting, and hopefully that'll become clear as to why these beds look like they do as we go along in the course. So I've got a piece of paper that I want to. It'd be nice to. Okay, let's do our sector. So we'll move on to sector analysis now. So sector analysis is another tool that you can use in permaculture, and it helps you to, again, it's a patterns to details kind of thing. It's something that you'd actually draw on a piece of paper or on something, and it helps you record your observations about your site. So it's a little bit like site analysis, but site analysis is looking at what's happening on your site. Sector analysis is looking at the things that are influencing your site. So the things that are coming in from the outside. What sort of things might that include, do you think? Yeah, birds. Well, yeah, birds. Why not? Yeah, they come from outside, don't they? I've never even thought to put birds on a sector analysis, but yes, of course. Oh, we'll head back up there. And we talked.
If you have another garden or another farm nearby, how the way they are managing things might influence. So if they use pesticides, they might come across too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so if you're in a, so your neighbor is using pesticides and they could drift across into your space, that's something that you might include in your sector analysis and say, say it's over there, you would have a sector of pesticides wafting in. So you might want to think about your design and what you can do. I don't know what you can do about that. Maybe it's a communication thing, I'm not sure, but yeah, that'd be a pollution sector. Other things could be, what do you notice when you're standing out here today? Yeah, sunshine. So your sun paths or your sun sectors. So, and we'll do it. So we're standing here. It's quite sunny and bright. It's October the 22nd. Is that significant for anything? Is that No, it's nothing, is it? No, the equinox was September the 22nd. Anyway, so we're here. Imagine we're here, and we touched on this a bit last week. So let's go to the shortest day of the year, so June 22nd-ish, and we're standing in this spot. I think last week we talked about knowing where north is, and here we know north is that way because how do we figure out where north is? Yeah, where the sun is. Well, some ways. Yeah, so how the shadows are depending on the time of the day. I think last week we mentioned you can use your phone and it's got a compass, so that tells you. Google Earth will tell you. And in Sydney, the beach is kind of over that way somewhere, so that's east, so that's north. So you can be as technical or not as you like. But if we're here on the shortest day of the year, where's the sun and it's sunrise? Where's the sun going to be at sunrise? Over there? A bit more north, yeah. So in winter, the sun rises a little bit north of east. And where does it set? Over there.
Then a little bit southwest.
A little bit south of west. A bit north of west. Yeah, so it sets a bit north of west. And what about its path in the sky, the sun's path? It's kind of over there somewhere. Is it high, low, medium? In winter it's low, yeah, so it's actually quite low in the sky. And we'll draw this on our bit of paper in a minute, but so if you were looking, yeah, so the sun rises there, sets there, and it's got a low path. What about summer? If we were here on this longest day of the year, where would the sun rise? Sorry, where would it rise? Yeah, a little bit, this is where I should do my stretches beforehand, a little bit south of east. And where does it set? Oh, a little bit south of west. And its path is high, yeah? So it's almost straight up. So the sun in summer moves on a completely different path than it does in winter. So what? How does that affect our, why do we, who cares? What's that mean?
Certain plants need more sun or less sun. So I guess what you plant and what season.
Yeah. So, yep. So some plants need more or less sun. Some plants grow in winter, and in winter, our sun and our shade is very different to what it is in summer. So it changes throughout the year, I guess, is the important thing, and that determines which plants we put where, because different plants like different conditions. What's the other thing you noticed today? Yeah, the wind. Where is the wind coming from? It's kind of swirling around a little bit, but generally. So where's it coming from? Yeah, here it comes. There we are. So you can feel it. It's coming from over that way. What direction is that? Northeast. So you name the wind after where it comes from. So northeast. And those of you who have lived in Sydney, what do you notice about that northeasterly wind or breeze? How does it feel? Cold? Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Coming over the ocean.
Yeah. So it comes off the ocean. Mostly in summer. We don't tend to get them so much in winter. I'm sure I'm wrong on that, but mostly you notice them in summer because why? What does it do for us? Yeah, it cools us down. It's quite a hot day, and if it wasn't, this is the cooling breeze. So the northeast sector. Imagine you're dividing up if you're looking down and dividing up your surroundings into like pieces of pie. So the northeast sector is our cool summer breeze sector. We'll draw it in a sec. If we're standing here on a January day and it's like stinking hot, it's about 45 degrees and we're all melting and it's windy, where's that wind coming from? Yeah, the west. So we get these hot westerlies in summer, and they're the days that aren't quite so nice. We don't get the cooling nor'easters, and that's when you get really hot days. So that sector is our stinking hot summer wind sector over there. We're here in winter, and it's pretty cold and windy. Where's that wind coming from? Yeah, typically it would come from the south. So that direction, and here, if you're here in winter, you'll feel it. Really strong cold winds coming from that direction. So we might put on our analysis, that's our cold winter winds sector. So you kind of start putting this information onto a plan. So let's do that now. We'll go back to our table. I'll just quickly plot the sectors. Give me fun. You guys want to maneuver so you can see. So here, this is our mud map. So it's just a really rough kind of sketch of what's going on the site. There's a raised bed there, roughly a raised bed there. There's a raised bed there. Raised bed. Paths. Structure. So what the first thing we put on our sector analysis is, that's good. What information might we put on here?
Southeast west.
Yeah. So you put north. So generally north is up the page. This kind of one of those rules. So we can orient ourselves. Now let's do the winter. So our winter sun. So put a winter sun path. So it rises there, sets there. That's low in the sky. So that could be right. It's our winter. Winter sun path. Now let's put our summer sun path. Dry is somewhere over there. Let's set some over there and be quiet. That doesn't really help me. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone. Forget that one. That's kind of pointless. You might draw it going around like that. I don't know. Anyway, you know that it's rising that way and setting that way in summer, rising that way, setting that way in winter. So that can help you know where your shadows are going to be. So if you're standing here in winter, what are you going to find the conditions are? It's going to be shady the whole time. Yeah, it's going to be shady because there's the long shadows in the morning, long shadows in the middle of the day, and long shadows in the afternoon. So that's a shady section on the south of that wall. What about in summer, if you're here, standing here? Yeah, it's not shady at all because the sun's kind of right above. So it's actually probably quite a hot spot in summer. So that's a really tough spot if you're a plant. You know, you're getting baked in summer and you're freezing cold and shady in winter. So that's there's a challenge for your design process. The other sectors, what are we looking at over here? So we've got our northeast. This sector here, that's our cool summer breezes. Our cool summer breezes sector is there, so you can see that cool summer breezes. And over here, from there to there, that's our hot summer winds. So they're kind of coming in from that direction. And then we've got our freezing cold winter sector. So why is this helpful?
To decide which plants to put in.
Yep, so it helps inform you where you might put your plants. What do we want to do with our cold winter winds for our plants? Yeah, so we know that these winds are not necessarily desirable for our design, so it might indicate that maybe we want to put a bit of a windbreak here. Or maybe we get really hot summer winds. Maybe we want a bit of a windbreak in this section as well. What about our cool summer breezes? Do we want a windbreak for them? No. So we want to encourage those. So it starts to form some patterns for your design. So just putting it down on paper and noticing it and thinking it through, it starts to develop some responses to the patterns that are happening in real life. And that's really what sector analysis is. Maybe here, I don't know how you guys are going. We may have if we're standing here, this could be a noise sector. Maybe a noise that you love, it may be a noise that you don't necessarily want. So, not a lot that you can do about that, except put a big brick wall up, which is not going to happen. But you can start, and you mentioned the pollution, so maybe there's this, and you start putting all this, and it informs your design. So it's patterns that then allow you to design in the detail. Did anyone have a question about that and process and how it? No? Anyone on Zoom? So.
Sorry, how do you account for buildings around?
Yeah, really good point. So maybe, here we don't have buildings, but in your space, you might have, you might be surrounded by buildings. So your sector analysis might look completely different. Okay, imagine this is a 5-story building, and so is this, and so is this, and maybe there's one here as well. Okay, and you're completely surrounded by buildings. So how will you may not necessarily have hot summer winds as an issue. Maybe this building is kind of sending them off. So so this sort of analysis is totally specific to your site. You may have a balcony or a small space that is right near the coast. So these cool summer breezes that we love here suddenly become really strong salt-laden summer winds that are smashing your garden every day. So maybe you do want to respond to them. So it's a really good question. So thank you. Yeah, it's very, very site-specific. But it's the patterns, and you'll notice throughout the year the patterns change. The winds come from different directions. It's quite useful. It's actually a really useful tool in permaculture for thinking about the things that are influencing your site and your design from the outside. All right. Cool. So let's do some seed planting now. We've done too much thinking. It's not good for your brain. Let's engage the hands. So we might move over to this table, and we'll demonstrate to you guys on Zoom how we'd go about planting a seed. So what's the benefit, before we start planting with seeds, what's the benefit of growing from seed? Is anyone growing from seed? Or have grown from seeds before?
They can be free.
They can be free. They can be totally free. In fact, we've got some couple of packets of seeds here that we harvested from this garden last year. So totally free seeds. So we got some lettuces and some radishes, which is great.
What's like, I guess, as a plant, I don't know, being grown in the same soil, does it help if you harvest those seeds and plant them?
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Yes, it does. So a really good question. If you're harvesting seed from your garden in your soil conditions, with your sectors influencing your garden, chances are the plants that grow successfully in your specific garden will grow successfully next year. So if you harvest the seeds from these plants, yes, yeah, you should result in. Yeah. So that's definitely a benefit. One other benefit, I mean, there's lots of them, but just quickly, another benefit is you can get so many different varieties of plants in seed form that you may not be able to get as seedlings from the your kind of nurseries and hardware stores that sell seedlings these days. So more diversity, more choice. If you go online there's a few online seed places who do heirloom varieties. So there's Green Harvest, Eden Seeds, Green Patch Organic Seeds. I'm sure there are others. Diggers Club.
Seed Savers Network.
Seed Savers Network. What's that one?
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah, the Seed Savers Network. What was I saying? Like you can get so many different varieties of things, like tomatoes that you wouldn't even dream about. They're available. So it's much more fun, much more diverse, and it's cheaper. Free, and even a packet of seeds is relatively cheap compared to buying seedlings. All right, so we'll show you guys how we go about growing seeds here. So I'll show you. You can make your own seed raising mix. So you got a couple of options. You can buy a bag of seed raising mix, which is appropriate for growing seeds, or you can make your own. We like to make our own because it's more cost effective, and we can sort of control what goes into it. Seed raising mix, you're not necessarily 100% sure about what it is. Let's have a look at a seed before we start. So these are beans, dwarf beans. So that's a seed. Seeds are amazing. So seeds are pretty much what plants exist for. It's the next generation. So a plant, well, a lot of plants that we grow from seed are annual plants. So they grow, they flower, they seed, they die in one season generally. So all that sun energy, all that water, all that food from the soil, all the nutrients, they get pumped into these little packages of goodness that allow the next generation to survive. So this seed has everything in it to grow a whole new plant. There's lots of energy that the plant puts into this guy to get going. Does anyone know what this little packet needs to start growing?
Water and
water.
yeah.
Yeah, water and warmth. And one other thing. Time, yes, definitely time. If you just plonk that in a glass of water, would it go okay, do you think? What is this?
Darkness? Light?
No. Yeah, there's something in the soil that is not water. Oh yeah, there's definitely bacteria in the soil. Good question. Nutrients? Does it need nutrients? No, it doesn't. So yeah, to start off, it doesn't because it's got all the nutrients in that little package to start off with. So it needs air. So if it's too wet, too much water, it can rot. So it needs some air around it as well to germinate. But essentially, water, warmth, and a bit of air, and it will grow. So when we're making our seed raising mix, we just keep that in mind. So we've got this stuff here. Does anyone know what this is? I don't know if you can see that on Zoom. It starts out like that. Yeah, so it's coconut fiber, the hairy stuff from the outside of a coconut. And it's chopped up. It's actually a waste resource from the coconut industry. It comes from overseas, but it's a waste product. It comes in these like solid kind of bricks. They compact it. You put it in water, and it turns into this fluffy stuff. And we can use that as one of our ingredients in our seed raising mix because it holds a lot of water. Okay, so it's really good at holding moisture. So that provides the moisture for our seed to germinate. some potting mixes and seed raising mixes use a thing called peat, which does the same thing, but peat comes from peat bogs, which are like 20,000-year-old ecosystems, and they get mined and dug up and destroyed. So we choose to use a recycled product. So that's coconut fibre. It's cheap as chips. It's a couple of bucks for like 9 litres. So some people grow seeds just in that. You can, but it's probably a bit too wet. There's too much moisture and not enough air. So I would mix something into that helps it drain a bit and helps put some air into the mix. Any ideas what we could maybe use?
Sand, perlite?
Yeah, yep. So you could use something like perlite, or this is vermiculite, which is a similar thing. And it'll blow, it's going to blow everywhere, but it's a very lightweight, it's actually a mineral. So it's a natural product, but it does come from a mine somewhere. But it's really light and it adds air and it drains. So it's a lot of professional potting. A lot of potting mixes have vermiculite or perlite or sand.
Is vermiculite and perlite the same thing?
No, slightly different, but
Okay.
similar. Yeah. Sand. So this is called propagating sand. It looks just like river sand, but you can get much cheaper in a river sand version. It's mixed sizes of particles, and it just helps. It adds air to the mix.
The Sydney sand, could you use that?
You could use Sydney sand, yeah. I mean, the only trouble with both of these is this would have been on the bed of a river somewhere sometime. So, you know, everything we do in permaculture, we just need to have a think about what impact are we having, where's it coming from. You could use, when it's available, like finely crushed terracotta. That could work quite well, and that's, you know, we might get some hailstorms sometime soon. They'll be everywhere, so we'll have a good supply of crushed terracotta. There's a good side to everything, but yeah, you know, whatever you can get that helps drain it with the minimum negative impact.
You simply recycle and a broken terracotta pot.
Yeah,
You manage somehow to crush it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. If you've got something sitting around that you don't need anymore, if it's broken and not useful, smash it up and make it into new drainage mix. I love it. So what do we do when we're making a seed raising mix? 1 part coconut fibre, and we'll use this, and 1 part drainage material, and that. Mix it up, and there you have a really nice seed raising mix. It's really simple. Do we need to add nutrients to it? Yeah, not necessarily, because the seed has enough nutrients to get it up to a certain point, and it'll be fine. We can, but when it gets to a certain point this is if we're planting in our little pots, there will be a point where it does need food. It needs some nutrients. So we don't necessarily need nutrients in here to get started, but it's not a bad idea to put some in for that point when it does need to start drawing nutrients out of the soil. I've got some worm castings, or I found it in a bucket in the shed. I'm assuming it's kind of worm castings or compost or something. It looks really nice and rich. So a little handful, maybe just half a handful. So of some sort of nutrient. You could put in a little bit of chook manure, a little bit of compost, a little bit of worm castings, just something to give them a bit of a boost. The only trouble with worm castings and compost is that they always have seeds in them that will start to grow, so you might get all these random kind of seeds popping up in your mix. So that's the only downside to it, if you think that's a downside. So there's your seed raising mix. The type of pots. So when you can plant seeds directly into your garden, particularly if you've got a small space and you're only using pots anyway. Maybe you can make some seed raising mix like this. Clear a spot in the pot that you're wanting to plant into, put a little pocket of seed raising mix, and then plant your seed directly into your pot. That could work really well if you're pots in the right conditions for seed growing. We're going to use these little pots because what we can do with these, what's the benefit of planting your seeds in pots first and then transplanting them into the garden, do you think?
You keep them like inside if you need to, or somewhere, protected.
That's the real benefit. You can put this pot in a perfect growing spot for this little seed to germinate and to grow. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So
use the egg carton, Steve, and make holes, so you didn't want to go down the plastic.
Yep. I know. I've grown
they
things
just make a few little holes in the bottom, and okay.
The only thing, the only thing with egg cartons is they're quite a small.
They're small.
So you need to be sort of transplanting on, but that's okay. They work really well. I've got you can buy these pot makers where you can make a pot out of newspaper. They're kind of cool. So you just kind of. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. IKEA's got one. So, and other places. Basically anything that will hold a little pocket of soil you could use for seed raising. But we'll use one of these. So you can get these or these. What's the benefit of this one against this one? The depth, yeah. So this one will allow the roots to grow down more, whereas these ones, the roots are a bit more limited. So I prefer to use these guys. You just you fill it up with your potting mix up roughly to the top, and it's very light and fluffy. There's a lot of air in there, probably too much. So one option is you can, so you guys can see, you just tap it a few times on the table, and you can see the level goes down a little bit, and just like that. So it's dropped about a centimetre. Another option is you get a second pot and just gently kind of tamp it down like that. Try and avoid doing this. What's the problem with doing this?
No air.
Yeah, it squashes too much of the air out. So you want some air in there. But if it's too compacted, it's not so ideal. So I like the jiggle around method. We'll plant some of these beans. So how many seeds do you think you might put in a pot this size?
What? 6?
Yeah, somewhere around there, 4, 5, 6. Oh, make it 4. So the general rule of thumb is you plant this. So some seeds are relatively big, like these seeds. Some seeds are much smaller. Got dirty hands. I don't want to make this, but so radishes a little bit smaller, and you can get seeds that are much smaller again. The general rule of thumb is you plant the seed twice as deep as the size of the seed. So the bigger the seed, the deeper you plant it, is a general rule. So that seed's about 1 centimetre. You might plant it a couple of centimetres deep. The radishes are only a couple of millimetres, so you almost could just plop them on the top. And just sprinkle a bit of mix over the top of that. And again, you want good contact between the soil and the seed. You just tamp it down gently, and we've got 4 radishes in there that hopefully will germinate. If I was planting a bean, I might just push my finger in a couple of centimetres, drop a bean in, and cover it over like that. Sometimes if you can put 2 seeds in one hole, why would you do that? Yeah, just in case. If you've got a bucket full of seeds, you'd probably do that. If you've only got a few, because you'll have to sacrifice one if they both germinate. So that's now I just put beans and radishes in the same pot. Would you do that normally?
Depends on the seed, though, does it? Like if the radish is closer to the surface.
Yeah. So in this context, because we're going to take, once the plant gets up to a certain height, we're going to divide them out and plant them out. You probably wouldn't, because different seeds germinate. Well, one reason is different seeds take longer to germinate than others. So the beans might be growing really well and the radishes might not have even started. So you'll disturb the radishes when you're planting out your beans, or it just gets confusing. It's easier when it's in a pot like this to transplant, just to keep the one seed. But if you're planting directly in the garden, you would definitely mix them up in a container. So this is the only time when you do monoculture, is when you're growing in these little vines. So is that it? We good to go? Yeah, so we want to water it. So your seeds will need some water, even though there's quite a bit of moisture in the potting mix, in the seed raising mix. I might just come over here to water. So I'll come over here in the garden so we don't waste the water. When you're watering, particularly with very fine seeds, you want to get a nice soft flow with the water. You give it a bit of a drink, and it's coming out the bottom. So probably watered a little bit too much, but you want to make sure that that whole pot is moist. So there's water going all the way down. What else are we going to do with this?
Find a nice spot.
Yep, so we'll find a nice spot for it. What would be a nice spot for some seeds? Yeah, somewhere warm.
Out of the wind.
Out of the wind, yes. Definitely out of the wind. The wind will dry it out really quickly.
Direct or indirect sun?
Yeah, what do you reckon? Would we put it in direct sun or keep it in a bit of indirect sun, or a bit of shade? Yeah, a little bit of dappled sun is probably not the worst. And I think it depends on the season. So imagine, a day like today, or even a day later in summer, and we had this out here in the sun, what's going to happen? Dry out really quickly, yeah, and it might get too hot. So you want to make sure you keep the soil or the seed raising mix nice and moist. So if it's in a spot where it's just getting baked and drying, you may have problems there. So you want to keep it somewhere you can keep it moist. A lot of people, well, a good place is on top of your hot water heater, because you get warmth coming up from underneath. And in winter, you probably want a warmer spot. In summer, you'd find a slightly cooler spot, as a general rule. But you just try different spots and see what works for you. What else are we going to do? There's one thing that we need to do. Imagine we're planting a nice diverse garden. So permaculture is all about diversity. If we're planting some different types of seeds at the same time, yeah, label. So it's amazing how similar little seeds. Yeah, we've all done it. So it's very easy to think, what's that? So I'll just I'll duck back over to the table. You can kind of make a label out of anything, recycled, old yogurt containers or something that are cut up, paddle pop sticks. And what information do you think will be useful to put on your label?
The date.
The date. Why is the date important?
So you know how long it takes, and if it's not sprouted,
Yeah, that's exactly right. So most of your seeds should be germinated well and truly within a month or so. Some of them come up in a few days, some of them a week. But if most of them, if they're not up in a month or 6 weeks, they're probably not going to. So what is it? The 23rd of October, 2020. What else are we going to put in there? Yeah, what it is. So this is a dwarf bean gourmet delight. And that's probably, if you're doing it at home by yourself, that's probably all you need. If you're into seed saving, Are you a seed trader? No? Anyone? You guys?
Would love to.
Yeah. So we started a seed library here at the Randwick Permaculture Garden, and we put slightly more information on the labels. So what else would we put on there?
Which garden it's been grown from, where it's come from.
Yeah.
That's probably the main additional thing. Where it's from. We also put down what season it's good for planting, so we can actually put all the spring planting seeds in the same drawer.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can just grab them, so we don't have to figure out which seeds. We can just grab spring planting seeds or summer planting seeds.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so you can put whatever information you like, but it's certainly the date and the type of plant. Put your label on in somewhere like that. Put that in a nice warm spot. Somewhere in which zone would you put your seeds in?
0.
Yeah, 1 or 0. So somewhere where you are regularly, and so you can keep an eye on them on your windowsill. If you got a nice warm windowsill, it's perfect. You can watch them as they pop up. And that's what else? Probably the most important things.
How would you know when to put them in the ground?
Yeah.
Or in the pot?
Okay. So all of these, say all the peas, all the beans, all the radishes. I'm going to get confused with this one. We'll have to check it out. So just imagine these are all beans. The bean will start to grow, and the first thing that you'll see popping up out of the soil, grown beans before.
Oh, as a kid.
Yeah, as a kid.
Child in cotton.
Yeah, cotton wool. Yeah. So you'll notice it's what happens. It's almost the seed. You'll see 2 leaves pop up through the soil effectively, and they're shortened, and they're not actually real leaves. They're called, what are they called? Cotyledons, I think. So they're seed leaves. So they don't actually photosynthesize, I think. So anyway, you'll get the 2 leaves, and then you'll see a stalk coming up out of the middle of those 2 leaves, and then they'll start to grow more leaves, and they're what we call the true leaves. So those leaves actually photosynthesize. And it's different for different plants, but basically you would wait until you've got at least probably a couple of pairs of true leaves before you transplant. That's one way you can tell when it's ready to go in the garden. Another way is just the size of the thing, if it's ready. Another way is to check the bottom of the pot. If you start seeing some roots coming down there, it's probably about time to transplant. So there's a very unscientific way of telling when to transplant, but
we don't have our regular Googler on Zoom with us, so I couldn't help myself. But cotyledons don't photosynthesize until the nutrients in them is used up, and then those cotyledon leaves either fall off or they'll turn green and start to photosynthesize.
There you go. Cool.
So they can do a bit of both.
Yeah, awesome. One thing you can do is put your seeds in something like this. So this is just it's literally a mini greenhouse, mini hothouse, and I've got a couple of these at home, and they really work a treat. They seem to get really good germination rates and really good growth, as long as it's not out in the sun, because you'll cook your seeds. But it just creates a really nice, warm little microclimate for your seeds to germinate in. You could also use an old drink container, cut the bottom off and stick it over the top of your pot. That seems to help. Just anything that kind of keeps that temperature nice and warm and moderated can be really helpful. So if you're at home zooming away, what we're going to do with these guys this afternoon is do more seed planting, and we're going to monitor our seeds over the next 9 weeks. So we'll grow some here, and we'll get the guys to take some home if they want to and bring them in and show them off, so we can have a bit of a seed growing thing going on. So you're welcome to do that on Zoom as well, and send us photos or pictures or videos or whatever.
You can always, there's the PermaBee Instagram, so you can always tag at Randwick Permabee.
Show us what you're growing and how well they're going.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome to see. All right, so what have we got? Another 5 minutes.
11.
Okay. So we might, as we normally do at the end of each session, for you guys on Zoom, if maybe Julian can facilitate a bit of a feedback round robin where you just share one thing. So today we've had a bit of a tour of the garden. We talked a little bit about zone planning. We did a sector analysis and we did some seed raising, seed planting. And I've just basically told you everything that we've done. So
Steve, about the seed planting, what would be good to plant now, like to plant now?
yeah.
Seed now so that you get some development for the summer, you know, is it specific to this time?
Yeah, so that's
spring, yeah.
Do that in a second. Just,
yeah. So really good question, and remind me to talk about this next week when we do a review at the beginning of seed planting, seasons and different plants for different seasons. So it's a really good point.
We'll go alphabetically, and then if we've got time, we'll certainly come back. So just get your take yourself off mute ready. So we'll go Alex, followed by Catherine. One thing that you learnt.
Hello, thank you again.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, one thing I learned today is that sector analysis means things that are coming in from the outside, and you need to tackle it.
Sector analysis means things come from the outside. Yeah, great.
Great, thanks.
So Catherine, followed by Denise. Actually, Denise, it looks like you're ready. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, look, I really enjoyed that. Thank you. I will not use those small, shallower pots now for my seed planting, which was a good tip. I quite like the idea of making my own seed mix to plant them in, but it's a matter of actually being able to store a lot of different stuff to mix that together. And I really enjoyed the plan, the sector plan, which I had absolutely no idea about doing. So I might try and do it with my own garden. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Catherine, are you there? Okay, Jeane, followed by Julian.
Oh, thank you. I've only ever grown seedlings in potting mix, so I'm going to give it a go to make my own seedling mix. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Julian, followed by Michelle. Okay, Michelle, followed by Ree.
Hey, hi Julian.
Hey.
I guess look, I'm just really interested on the sector analysis, really, and just trying to think about that more broadly across our whole unit block premises. So yeah.
Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hey.
Ree, followed by Ramel. Ramel, followed by Sebastien.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Excellent. The importance of air in the racing mix was a good takeaway, and how water can also clog that airflow. So you have to just kind of find a happy medium. That was really good. Thank you.
Sebastien, followed by Tarani.
Yeah, really enjoyed the whole course, but yeah, it was good to see the demonstration of sector planning. I'd read about it, but it's good to see it on paper on an actual example. And the tip about using coconut fiber for the seed raising mix and the importance of air, and that probably gives my answer to the question I have, which is I've been using like 100% worm casting to grow some seed, and I guess it's probably a bit too wet, like just coconut fiber, or is it okay-ish?
Straight worm castings, was it? Or
Yep.
Yeah, probably you probably want to mix it with some sand or something to open it up a bit and give it some drainage. Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Thanks, Ramel. Tarani?
Hello, thank you, Julian and Steve. I found the sector analysis interesting and the use of coconut fiber. Where do you get that from?
Most large places.
Hardware stores, nurseries.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to get.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it comes in like a brick, like they compact it down into a brick size.
Yeah. And then do you soak it or what?
Yeah, you soak it in a bucket of water, about 9 litres of water, and it just puffs up into about 9 litres of coconut fibre. And it costs about $2 or $3 for a brick. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that.
Okay, no worries.
And then Catherine's written in via chat about she learned about the sun movement. So that brings us to the end of session 2. Next week is no waste, all about worm farming and composting.
Yeah, cool.
So that'll be a good one. There'll be a lot of questions there, I know. Yeah, all the basics there. So, do you want to say about that?
No, I can't wait. Love that. If you haven't got a worm farm or a compost, it's probably one of the first things you should do, I think, for a permaculture garden. Yeah, definitely.
And in preparation for that, you might want to go to compostrevolution.com.au, Compost Revolution, because depending on where you are, your council has provided a huge discount for getting compost bins and worm farms. And they've also got a little educational thing there, which will set you up really well for next week. So we really hope you come next week. Please register. And also I'll be sending a little feedback form out, and it's really useful. Even if you gave a bit of feedback last week, it's always helpful to hear the feedback each week. Thank you very much. So we'll say goodbye.
See you
Wave. Okay, see you everyone.
Thanks, bye.
Okay, so yeah.